It was one of those days where you think that you have your show laid out. We were all set to talk about Miramax television having financial difficulties, and we still will. But that was going to be the headline of tonight's show, and how Miramax TV's financial difficulties, well, have not outright canceled the Halloween series, have caused significant change, reportedly, and it's not hard to see that. And then a little birdie whispered in my ear, "Yeah, you might want to check this out." So the fellows at Slash and Cast, who we followed up a report months ago on, who really deserve all the credit in the world for being, I'd say, outside of even more so than us, they're on top of the Halloween game. I don't think anyone's been on it more than the two YouTube channels between us and them. I'll go ahead and stake my reputation on that. And then so I reached out to a friend and was just like, "Is any of this true?" And not only did they say, yes, it's true, but they're missing this part of it. And we're going to talk about why my anticipation scale for this game has gone from a 8 out of 10 to about an 11 out of 10. Will I regret that down the road? Probably. But until then, I'm going to enjoy this moment. Welcome to the Mask of Fear. Welcome back to the Mask of Fear, your one-stop shop for all things Halloween, horror, Star Wars, and more. And guess what? On tonight's show, there's a whole lot of Halloween, and there's a whole lot of Star Wars. Two very significant topics for both franchises. I'm Sean, joined by my partners in crime this evening. First up, he's the Grand Moff. Randy, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot. Just thinking it was Monday because I had yesterday off due to the holiday, and I'm just going. I see the show notes. Went right Tuesday. So yeah, my brain was not fully with it today, but back to work, all that fun stuff. But yeah, it's cool to hear that we're getting some exciting Halloween game news. Really hope that it's definitely worth getting as hyped as you are, because if you're hyped, that means I'm going to be hyped.
So to be clear, let me preface this by saying I am hyped by what I heard. We're not going to talk about tonight, because I know Johnny's just waiting to be Captain Buzzkill, on the probability of it happening. We're going to talk about as if it is going to happen this evening. We can talk about it not happening down the road, and that very well may happen. But tonight, we're going to be glass half full, and anybody who's been around these parts for a long time knows that I have a hard time doing that. So, also joining us, he's not only Mr. Fabulous Threesome, he's Mr. Invisible. That does not mean his wife is Miss Invisible, but he's Mr. Invisible tonight. Johnny V, what's going on?
I would like someone to explain to me how I can see myself in the preview screen, but not on the show screen. It is unfathomable to me that is an issue I'm facing tonight. Like, usually it's the opposite. I can, like, my preview screen will be frozen. I can't see myself, but I can see myself perfectly fine in the screen. But tonight it's decided to do the opposite, and I cannot figure out how to fix that. I've done everything that usually fixes the issue in previous weeks, but tonight, tonight I'm just two letters.
Well, let's keep in mind, well, we've always said that our shows are for mature viewers. Put the kids to bed, probably not safe to watch and or listen. There are certain restrictions on YouTube, and I'm guessing Restream as well. So my question is, what kind of funky business you got going on over there?
None.
No.
I mean, funky business would imply some degree of fun. This is not fun. Nothing fun is happening here.
All right.
Except for this show, which is fun. But, you know, fun against TOS is not happening on any website.
It's going to be fun. Let's run down the slate for tonight. We're talking Halloween the game. We're going to tell you a bunch about it. And not just a bunch of stuff you've heard before, a bunch of new material that you're going to want to hear. And I think some of it's going to surprise you. And I think another part of it is going to absolutely blow you away. As long as you keep in mind that this is not a AAA level game, and it's not all of a sudden going to look like Grand Theft Auto, like certain bigger content creators in this space have been preaching for years they want in a Halloween game. That's just not realistic. If you keep your Captain Realistic hat on, you can let your mind just imagine the possibilities tonight. I think you will leave tonight's show with a much brighter outlook on this game and what it is going to offer you in the short term, but in the long term, which is not something that has been discussed. So stay tuned for that one. We're also going to talk about the Miramax situation. The TV department, we know, went through a change of leadership. Jim Hellwig out, somebody else in. I can't remember her name. But there's also some financial difficulties over there. And when you are the ones that pay a good chunk of production budgets and marketing budgets, that means you have limited funds and resources to make things. And we're going to talk about how that can affect the Halloween TV series. We're going to kill a rumor about Mr. Mike Flanagan. He was out there today that he dropped out of The Exorcist. We're going to talk Spider-Man. That's right. Does Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars need Spidey? Johnny and I are going to talk a little bit about Gears of War, what we played. I think we played about the same in terms of online multiplayer, but I've had a chance to play a few hours of the story mode, and I have some thoughts. We're going to run down this slate of upcoming Star Wars releases, something we've never done like this before, and it's big. And then Johnny's going to have a chance to educate us, maybe even Randy too. Hot take. Even though I'm a CM Punk fan, I never really liked AJ Lee when she was around. I'm just being honest. And I'm pretty sure Johnny did. But lately, I've heard a bunch of she had this big impact on the locker room and the division at that time that she never got to see the fruits of her labor. I've heard it now from people like Post Wrestling, Fightful Select, and I'll be honest, and I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I have no fucking idea what they're talking about, and I'm hoping Johnny's wrestling hat will guide us through it. Let's pay some bills, though, off the top here. Big shout out to our channel sponsors. Ryan over at Kaulignation, your one-stop shop for all things NASCAR, Kaulig Racing, Dinger Nation, and SVG Nation. Our good buddy Jesse over at Jesse Storytime Spectacular. And the man himself, who's going to have a new show coming out that we're going to tell you about next week, Mr. Backtrack Cinema, Jason Knight. Great place for your retro movie reviews. Consider supporting us on Patreon for bonus content. That's right, we got bonus content. And I was late putting this one up because it's just been a crazy time. But up on the channel officially right now is the Ahsoka Episode 3 Watch Party, available over on Patreon, patreon.com/The Mask of Fear. The link is in the description below. And we really get in and out, on that particular episode. Story of my life, in and out. But as Jade chokes on her food. She's okay, though. No one call 191. Tomorrow night, we're going to be watching episode 4 of Ahsoka, but as long as technology agrees with us, which you never know when it is or isn't, just ask Johnny. For you that are already subscribed to Patreon, there will be a live link to watch it with us as it's happening, rather than watching I guess what would be more of a commentary than a watch party. But that'll be tomorrow night, and we're going to set it for 10:30 p.m. Eastern, because I have no idea how long AEW runs for these two. But 10:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night on Patreon, patreon.com/The Mask of Fear. And we got new episodes dropping in the next 7 to 10 days of not only The Legacy of Halloween, but The Curse of Thorn as well. So if you're a Halloween fan, stay tuned for that. All right, fellas, let's dive into this. I'm already getting winded. The Halloween game. Hey, Shan's in the chat. What's going on, brother? Him and I both kind of, speaking of him, approached the Halloween game with skepticism. And look, I think Johnny had this take too. You hear asymmetrical horror in 2025, and it's kind of like, here we go again. Nothing new. But I would say not only in the months leading up to the announcement, but in the recent weeks since the announcement, we've covered a lot that they're trying to separate themselves a little bit from that typical asymmetrical horror game, whether it be their single-player mode, their story mode, which are two different things, or their online mode with NPCs involved and different tasks and whatnot. Slash and Cast, to give them the credit, came out today, and basically everybody under the sun missed an article from Game Informer. And I mean, like, none of the big content creators covered this. No one. It was out there. It was out there the day of the announcement, but nobody fucking covered shit. Or maybe not the day of the announcement, but shortly after. And you got direct quotes from people from Elphonic in there too, making the game. And what has been revealed is, let me ask you two here. You know what an ESRB rating is?
Of course.
All right. Well, those ratings don't get placed on games, regardless of what that title is, until the game is close to being complete. And here's a shocker, but the game is close to being complete, for starters. Now, I want people to check their expectations on when they're going to play this game. Because just because a game is almost complete doesn't mean that the game is going to be released in February or March or April. Every indication I've been given is they will fine-tune this thing and make sure that it is ready for launch for an October release next year. Now, apparently there's been some pushing from inside people for a late summer release around this time next year. But from what I understand, the wonderful people at Compass International, aka Trancas, want this game out in October 2026. So you're still a little over a year away from the game, is what I would expect. What it means, though, is betas for the game might come earlier than you expect. What it means is, I can tell you as of today, this one's ironclad. Significant footage of not just the game itself, but the story mode of the game will be released this October. That's how far along they are at this point. And one of the other things that came out was, and we speculated on this, we were reading in between the lines, but this is straight from the people at Elphonic, that they've had permission from the man himself, the guy where every dollar stops when it comes to Halloween, Malak Akkad, the keeper of the shape, has given them permission, with approval from them, of course, they can't just go do whatever the hell they want, to add to the original Halloween story from 1978. Remember, you are playing as Michael Myers in the story mode in this game. You are playing through the events of 1978, possibly even altering some of those events. But if you think back to Halloween 1978, fellas, and we'll start our conversation here before I reveal anything else. Michael Myers is not in very much of that movie. Much like Darth Vader is not in very much of A New Hope. So does it make sense to the two of you that there was a necessity to add new events as Michael travels from place to place? Start with you, Mr. Invisible.
I mean, I don't. You always want more of Michael, no matter the form. Like even in the movie, like the movies are sort of the fine line between where you want more of Michael and when you need more of Michael. I think the game is going to require more, especially with this sort of form of how they're presenting the content. Requires more of that than you would have gotten in like the early films. So I think
Especially
adding
playing as Michael.
exactly. So like unless you're gonna like, I mean, if you had a game that was the length of screen time Michael got in the first movie, you'd have one of the shortest games I've ever played. Like I played N64 games that would have been longer than that.
Sonic 2, move on over.
Even that, I mean, but like you need to add things to lengthen the story, right? Like especially if you're going to be doing a story mode within this, right? And that's assuming the story mode is as Michael, which
It is confirmed.
exactly. So you need to lengthen out that process. You can't rely on like the Loris or the other characters that are a part of the story carrying a bulk of the content, because it just doesn't, video games don't work that way. You can't just be Michael standing in a corner and looking at somebody. Things have to happen to make the content worthwhile. So you're going to have to add things and do things that are sort of against tradition or against the expected norm, that still makes sense within the universe. And having gods and having a John Carpenter or somebody weighing in on how that will work is a huge benefit. You need that. You need people who understand Michael at his core to help direct. You need people like Ilphonic has made it clear that they're fans. So like it's going to be interesting to see like sort of how they thread that line of how you expect the shape to operate in a story versus how the game actually plays. I think there's going to be a lot more, I don't want to say cinematic style to the story mode, but I think it will lean pretty heavily on that. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, we've waxed poetic many times about, our love for the Heavy Rains and Until Dawns of the world. And, those are very cinematic heavy games. So obviously it can work and it can be good. And that's what it's going to come down to, is how good the story is, how detailed the things you can do, and how fun the things you can do are with Michael. Like, getting to actually make the kills and stalk the prey and those sort of things have to be good, or you're going to get lost in the sauce, and you're going to end up with something that is worse than the worst Telltale games.
Randy, how about you? Does this make sense to you? The necessity to add events to the movie playing as Michael?
It absolutely makes sense, because what you're going to want to do is create an experience that's going to make people want to play the story mode, not just play the multiplayer. And if you know the story, but they add stuff to it that you've never seen before, it's going to be more of that drive to want to actually see what they've added and how they've enhanced the story, that where it still fits into what you know of Halloween versus, and what maybe they change or what events they could change. I remember last time we talked about it, seeing the idea of showing him escaping Smith's Grove and all that entailed, considering how the movie ended up playing out when Loomis gets there and the patients are wandering around, and this is something that could be added to it through the eyes of Michael. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do, is they're going to give us through the eyes of Michael in terms of the steps between what we didn't see in the movie. So that could mean a lot of different things. Obviously, we've seen Smith's Grove, and we're pretty sure that's probably part of the story. We know that he stalks through the neighborhood. We know there's a lot of things that we didn't see him do that he did, that maybe that's something we're going to finally get to see. We're going to see his path of destruction. But it's going to be worth it. I mean, I feel like, just because how often can you say that I got to be Michael Myers in the story? I got to go through what he did through the entire movie. And you can't really say that for a whole lot. It's always, especially with a lot of these asymmetrical horror games, it's usually, everybody run, I try to kill you. That's pretty much all it tends to be. And I like what I'm hearing so far, that they're trying to be a little different. They're trying to add more to it and make it separate it from what we've seen before. And I'm really liking so far just everything they're saying so far. It seems like they've really thought it out. They're really trying to be different, and they're really trying to give us an experience that Halloween fans have never had when it comes to Michael Myers being involved in any video game.
So let's get into some of these other details here. Dr. Loomis fans, you'll be happy about this one. He narrates the story mode. Ilphonic and Compass have worked closely with the Loomis estate in order to use his likeness in it. There's rumors that the
Assume you mean
voiceover...
the Pleasance estate, yes?
Sorry, yes, the Pleasance estate. My apologies. I mean, I guess technically in Halloween story mode, the Loomis estate too, as he's no longer with us, the character either. And it's not Malcolm McDowell, people. Clearly not from the trailer. But so yeah, he's the story mode narrator. It was also revealed that the game is designed for you to play through the story mode first. You don't have to, but the people that play through the story mode are going to make for much better Michael Myers players, if you will, online than if you just go straight to online and end up being Michael. And anyone who is worried that Michael is going to get bullied online, much kind of like Jason did at times during Friday the 13th, that is not going to happen, apparently. He was described as unkillable. So, which makes sense because he was shot 6 times. Plus got a big ass needle through the eye and then some, and still got up and walked away. And speaking of getting up and walking away, here's the big nugget. The story mode does not end at the end of Halloween 1978. The story mode continues past Halloween 1978. And I'm not talking Halloween 2. I'm talking all new events made just for the game, approved by Malekakad and John Carpenter to tell a new story that will continue after the events of that movie, when Loomis looks over the balcony and he's gone, and Laurie's like, was that the boogeyman? And Loomis fires back with, as a matter of fact, I think it was. So if you thought you weren't going to get new story with this game, you are. And here's the caveat is this game isn't meant to be done in 12 months. This game they're looking at as a multi-year shelf life that will have story expansions. Now, my belief on this is the story expansions, well, you might get like online maps that are from other movies eventually that won't be available at launch. It'll be available, for a price, obviously, much down the road. The story expansions, I believe, will continue down the path of where you are in the game and will be all new story mode and events for the characters to unfold. So The story will not end when you're done. It could be 6 months later, it could be a year later, but there will be a new continuation of that is not Halloween 2 and an all new story to look forward to in video game format. And for people craving new Halloween content, for someone like myself who didn't just want to play through the movies because that feels so 90s, this is absolutely thrilling news. Again, we're not going to talk about whether they can deliver on that or not because that remains to be seen. But they're saying all the right things for sure. Johnny, what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, we've been saying this for weeks now that exactly that. They're saying all the right things. It all comes down to execution, Um, if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean, and that's sort of how it feels like, for these guys. It's Ilphonic and Gunn have put together a reputation that's not the greatest. And,
I think you could say that for Gunn. I don't think that's fair for Elphonic.
I mean, but the thing is, though, they worked so closely together on so much that, it kind of, rains on one and the other gets wet. And they're going to have to show, they're going to have to prove that it's not just talk, that they are, going to deliver on the promises. And if they can achieve that, then I think it'll be great. It'll, it has all the potential in the world. I've always said I enjoyed the Friday the 13th game from start to finish. I love playing it. It is probably the most fun I've had playing, an asymmetrical horror game. It just is.
I agree with that.
So, it's not like I don't think they can deliver on that element. It's going to be the story. I think that's sort of the big fish for them because it's new. It's different. It's not something they've ever done before.
Sounds like they're trying to make it the main selling point of the game.
And that's a risk. It's a very big risk for someone who's never done it before. You don't jump into that type of thing without sort of having the background for it and having already done it to a degree. So, time will tell. Like we've said, it's just going to come down to whether or not they succeed. If they succeed, then it's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. But there is a very real risk that they won't. That it will not deliver in the way that we hope that it does. And we have to be realistic about that possibility. And as much as I want to sit here and be like, oh, there's no chance it's going to be great no matter what, I can't say that because that's not a guaranteed fact. I'm still excited for it. I'm still hyped for it. But, I'm being realistic in the fact that this may be something that I enjoy that the masses don't. I'm okay with that because, I've gotten to the point in my gaming life where I like what I like and I don't care what everyone else likes, So that's going to be the most important thing for me is whether or not I like it. And I don't want to say I'm confident that they can deliver on that, but, I'm hopeful they can deliver on that. They have to this point. Even their not so good games have still been, had at least some degree of enjoyability. So as long as they can deliver on that, give me an experience that's fun, give me a game that's fun. I don't want to say I can forgive a lot, but I can overlook a lot. And as long as I have fun playing this game and I enjoy playing this game, I'll be happy because it's the most important thing is it's not going to be a full price AAA title. There is a much lower.
I don't know about that with what we're here. I'm not saying that I hope you're right. For the love of God, for my bank account, I hope you're right.
I don't think they have a chance to pull off a full price title.
I will say this. This game is going to sell more than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Friday the 13th, and I do not think it's going to be even close. When you look at Halloween's box office reputation to both of those franchises, it's not close. There's this common misconception around fans that Friday the 13th is more popular than Halloween. And I'm sorry, but it's not close. It hasn't been for a very long time. It's not the 80s anymore. I want you to be right. For the love of God, I fucking hope you're right. But I think there's a strong chance that it's a lot closer to full price than some discounted game. But we'll revisit this conversation, and I'll smash my head off the table if it's full price. And it's one of those times I wish Johnny was right.
I still think it's gonna be like 40 or 50 US dollars. I don't know how that translates to you guys, but no, I think this is gonna be one of those. This is one of those games where I think it's exciting that some of these creators get to be creative. Shocker! It's not just, hey, we're just gonna animate kills or try to do artsy fartsy shit. This is literally them getting to spread their wings and create a story. And that's how you separate everything from. I mean, like, if you look at Friday the 13th, yes, it was absolutely one of the most fun experiences I had with asymmetrical horror games, just because even if you're not Jason, the things you could do was still a lot of fun. And there was a lot of variety, a lot of different ways of dying, a lot of different ways of getting away from Jason. But with this you actually get the opportunity to have new lore because it's approved. That's the cool thing about it. It's approved by a COD, and I'm sure Carpenter's going to have a say in some of this stuff because he's an executive producer. So honestly, I think this is a step in the right direction. This is them taking the concept, what they started with Friday the 13th, and then elevating it to a whole new level where they could actually just explore the story that we never heard, the stories that were never told. And the idea of having quarterly, bi-yearly, yearly DLC that's going to expand on that story, things that we've never seen or heard before, that's relatively exciting. And that is definitely going to be a huge selling point for this game. Will the multiplayer be fun? As long as they learn from their mistakes with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they'll be fine. They clearly have the unkillable killer down with after Predator Hunting Grounds. So yeah, this is really just overall exciting, just because I think the fact that we're going to get all new lore, all new story, just things we've never seen, that's really going to probably sell a lot of Halloween fans on it, and a lot of just horror fans in general, because it's like, who doesn't know who Michael Myers is?
For sure. To touch on one thing you said there, it's important to note that Elphonic had nothing to do with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. That was a gun game, and gun has literally just come into the process now, as the game is in its. I don't want to say, like, in terms of fine tuning, it's almost done, but in terms of like the meat of the game, they're much further than people thought. And the date that I was told today is production on this thing began late 2022. So much further along than what we originally thought. By the way, what is a full price game in the States worth?
They're upping them to $70 a game. And
$69.99?
that, and then of course you have the deluxe edition and the super deluxe edition, $100 or $130. So yeah, it's getting pretty ridiculous. But unfortunately that's where the industry is headed, and it sucks. But if you want a game that badly enough, you will pay for the price for it.
Yeah, there's some rumors that there's going to be a special collector's edition of this, and that's one of the things Gunn has been brought on to help with. I cannot remember the last physical game I bought. Maybe when I got my PS5, we picked up a couple of physical games with it, like I think Harry Potter and the second Jedi Fallen Order game there. But that was just, we were getting the console and happened to be in the store. Everything we go with is digital. I'll say this, even as a Halloween fan, it's going to have to be one hell of a collector's edition for me to just not go with a digital version of this game. So we'll see if they're able to pull out anything nice in regards to that. Taking a look at the comment section here. A version that comes with a really good mask would be cool. Not some cheap Temu version. Well, when you look at what a Spirit Halloween mask goes for these days, you'd be like right there. You're getting into probably $150 American. Like, look at that new Halloween box set that's coming out, the 4K set. I think I shared it with you guys in our staff chat. It's Halloween 1 through 5, a bunch of extras that were already released on other formats. It's all steel case. It looks good, don't get me wrong. It's 13 discs. But the thing, after you add in the tariffs and the taxes, is over $400 American. That's over $500 Canadian. Let me tell you, I'm fine with my Scream Factory versions. They can keep it because not only would it land me in Divorcetown, USA, that's fucking like, and I get it. The world's a different place. We got tariffs. We don't need to get all fucking political on this. But that's only a portion of it, right? That only represents a small amount. The thing is outrageously overpriced. So I'll sit here and say right now, I'm not convinced this thing is going to be $50. And if there is a special edition of this game that comes with a mask that's even the quality of a Spirit Halloween mask, you are starting at 150 American minimum. Because the special edition's not just going to be a mask. There would be other features. And frankly, I already have some badass masks thanks to some wonderful people around these parts. I don't need a mask. Give a really cool collectible figure that looks good, and a poster and some other trinkets, and I'd be happy. I'd consider it depending on the price point. But I'm also willing just to pay whatever it is digitally and, not have to worry about my disc getting scratched or anything of that. We're going to move on here, though. If anybody wants to bring it back to the Halloween game, please feel free to send in a super chat. That will bring us back to that topic, and we would appreciate the support, as always. And like the video if you haven't yet. Slash that thumbs up button. It helps us a ton. Leave a comment. Even if you're not watching us live right now, leave comments. It helps out a lot. I'm just going to touch on this briefly because we just went for 37 minutes there. Miramax is having financial difficulties in the TV division. Probably explains why the changeover happened. All I will say is this. Originally, and this isn't from me, this is basically from them, it sounded like we were going to get a period piece for the Halloween TV series. It'd line up with what Crystal Lake's doing. It'd line up with what Welcome to Derry's doing. But according to our sources at the channel, because of these financial difficulties, the development on this show has shifted to a modern day show. Now, we can all speculate on if that means, did the events happen in 1978 and we're jumping to 2025? I think that's what most people are going to assume. But if I had to guess, they're going to tell a modern day version of Halloween with different characters. And, while the current events might take place in 2025, maybe the original events of whatever those original events are take place in 1998 or something. That's the route I think they're going to go here. I don't think they're going to ask you to believe that Michael Myers is, 50 or 60 years old. But it makes sense. Look, it's more expensive to film a period piece in 2025. It just is. The further you get away from those times, the more expensive it is. And it definitely sounds like that all the projects at Miramax TV, if they haven't been canceled, they've gone through some mass changes in terms of what's available for their budget. And frankly, we've seen the period piece essentially. We got a little bit of a period piece with the beginning of Halloween Kills. I know, originally we were going to get more of that, and that didn't happen, but I'm okay with telling a fresh modern story as long as it's not, here's Laurie Strode 3.0. Give us some new characters. If you want to bring back Michael and you want to bring back Loomis and it's set in today's day and age, I'm totally fine with that because just having it in this day and age will make for some things to have to be different because of technology. Johnny, some brief thoughts on this.
I mean, we've discussed many times, how the further back you go as a period piece, the more expensive it gets because the world looks so drastically different. I mean, obviously, the cheapest project is always the modern day project because you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to worry about what the world looks like or how the world feels or, not having cars from this decade or this century on the streets and computers and cell phones. All those things make your budget larger because it gets more and more expensive to track those things. For those props, they're much more in demand amongst projects, so it obviously loosens up the purse strings massively, bringing it forward into a modern setting. And I don't hate that idea. I don't hate the idea of sort of telling a modern day interpretation of the Michael Myers story as though the events took place today versus the 70s. Because let's be honest, outside of Halloween, there's nothing that ties. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason Michael Myers' story could not be told in 2025 that was told in 1975, 1977, in the 70s. It's a sacred cow that the timeline must be the timeline if you're going to tell an origin story. And that's the thing, if you're going to tell an origin story, it could just as easily be in 2025 as it is in 1975, and it's irrelevant to me as a viewer that the timeline could be the present, because I don't come to this story for the timeline. It's not a period piece. Like it's a period piece of its time, if that makes sense, right? It was made in that time period, so it's of that time period. It's not a story that requires that time period. It's not a gangster story that requires a timeline further back, because that's, it's so different modern day versus period that you can't tell that story. It's like you can't make a World War II film in 2025, taking place in 2025. That doesn't work. But taking the character of Michael Myers, transporting him to 2025 to tell a new origin story in the present, I personally don't have an issue with it. I know there are going to be lots who that's the opposite. It's a sacred cow. It has to be the same time period or it's not real. I don't care about that because I don't care about the time. Like, I'm not there for the time period. I'm there for the story. I'm there for the characters. I'm there for the kills. I'm there for, the atmosphere. Those are all things that can just as easily be in 2025 versus, 1999 or 1989 or 1970. You know what I mean? Like, the time period isn't relevant to the story so much so that it can't be moved to a modern setting.
Jade says the dated aspect is just the 90s. Michael's new mask is now Jim Carrey's face. The mask from The Mask, painted white. It's funny you say that because one of my favorite horror movies of the last decade is Hush. And when you think about the mask in that movie, that doesn't stay on the guy's face nearly long enough. It kind of resembles the mask from The Mask painted white. So, interesting take there. What's going to happen is, Johnny's going to get his way, but instead of the birthplace or the birth time of the origin being like 1998 or 2000, it will be, say, 2027. And the big breaking news will be John Carpenter has returned to write the series, and everybody will be just fucking going nuts. And he's writing an 8-episode standalone thing that will spawn off into a movie, and Johnny will be fist pumping, and everybody else will be fist pumping because it's John Carpenter, and they will have forgotten that in John Carpenter's last 2 attempts at doing a Halloween movie, one was going to be Halloween H2O, a different story about that, and the other, he was desperate to send Michael to space. So while it might start in 2025 or 2027, it ends up being in like the year 3078 or some shit, and we get Michael in space, and immediately everybody regrets wanting John Carpenter back.
I'm gonna need you to never say that sentence again.
Hey, I'm speaking fact here, man.
I know that. I'm gonna need you to never say it out loud again, because nope.
Randy, do you need a period piece, or can you get something in modern air to whet your appetite?
So what's interesting to think about with all this, especially coming into the modern age, is with the advent of social media, think about the types of different types of shots and the different types of stories they can go with in terms of, oh, I spotted the boogeyman, or here's a picture of the boogeyman, or and it's like you could easily sit there and utilize social media just for that aspect alone in the series, film, whatever, and have it as a big, not such a selling point, but just a way to just kind of increase paranoia and to help, really cause chaos and I think that's actually be a really cool idea to do. But also, if you think about it, if they're working hand in hand with the game, this could be one of the DLCs. We're introducing this storyline, or at least a portion of this storyline, into uh, the game and actually bringing like the character models and things like that. Especially if they're talking about years and years and trying to go for a few years and really bolster the amount of content they have. This would be a really interesting way of doing it. So, I mean, obviously, you guys are right. Period pieces are hard to do just because of the costs. You can't 3D print everything. You can't always use green screen. The only way to make it feel like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and at this point, even the 90s, you kind of have to film on location. You have to have the sets designed just right. There has to be a certain feel to it. And that is a lot of money. And if they don't want to put that money into it, then their best bet is to bring it into the current times, utilize everything they can, whether it's social media or other things that happen nowadays that they could just put into the story that would help build characters, create panic, which we've seen that in Kills alone, that it's not like they don't know how to do that, and that they don't know how to bring it into a more of a current setting and raise the level of panic and chaos. So it's not impossible to do that here in a series. And I think that would probably be the best way to do it. If you really want to shell out the money for a period piece, I'm not against it. But your best bet is to bring it to a new generation, bring it to a new era, and develop a whole new set of fans through that.
So confirmed, Randy wants Michael in space.
Hey, we got Jason in space, so I might as well screw it. At least see what happens with it. Even got Leprechaun in space. I mean, come on.
I am so not taking responsibility for that if it happens. Just wanted to touch on this. It came out earlier today on social media that Mike Flanagan had dropped out of The Exorcist. And considering he's already doing, The Dark Tower and a Carrie TV show, and he's got something else on the go as well. Plus, he had The Exorcist on the go. My thought immediately was, well, this guy's already too busy, but if he just dropped out of that big project, man, what I would give for them to just say, stop everything we're doing and let's go back to Mike Flanagan. I don't think it's in the cards, though. I don't think Mike Flanagan wants to either. He loves Halloween. It's his first horror love. Hush is his love letter to Halloween. But it's important to remember that this guy, before Halloween 2018 was made, took a crack at trying to write a script for it, and after one weekend, basically got back in touch with the people at Blumhouse and the people at Trancas and Compass, and just said, "I'm having a terrible time with this. I feel like I've already made my Halloween movie, and as much as I'd love to do it, I'd prefer to be someone who just sees the next one." So, on top of that, he's debunked it. So he came out and said that he's still involved with the project and that it's utterly false. And so I know it was getting out there how we'd put it out there, but pulled it down as soon as Mike Flanagan debunked it. So he is still on The Exorcist, which is a good thing for Blumhouse, because their last Exorcist movie was fucking terrible. I felt like I needed an Exorcist after seeing it. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic. Here we go. does Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars need Spider-Man? You know, we don't have too much time for this topic, either one of these topics, actually. But, Johnny, let me start with you, man. Keep in mind we're on a tight timetable here. Do these movies work without Spider-Man? I'm not saying he's not in it, but he's not one that's been officially announced as of yet, knowing that we're about to get a massive Part 2 cast announcement, and knowing that, you know, even though the next Spider-Man film is technically a Sony film, it's in the MCU. Would you be okay with these two stories being told without an appearance from the web crawler?
I think the first one, yes. I personally, I don't want him in Doomsday. I don't want that one iota, because you will spend the entire time waiting for the moment where Peter Parker sees Doctor Doom, and they have that, Mr. Stark? No, I'm Doom. Like some bullshit like that. I don't want that. I don't want any part of that to be in this film, because it's not, you know, I don't have time for member berries in this story. You know, like, you are cramming this story so full of characters and so full of story that I don't want to stop for a member berry. You know, like, sure, would the moment be gut wrenching? No, because I'm expecting it, you know, it'd be the only thing I expect. Like, it wouldn't have that visceral gut punch. Like, if they'd have just said Doctor Doom is your villain, and, you know, had Doctor Doom wear the mask and not announced that it's Robert, then fuck yeah. You know, give me that scene, because, you know, if that's the moment he takes off the mask, you know, and you get that moment with Peter Parker and you know, Victor Von Doom, who looks like Tony Stark, yeah, that moment would be fucking epic, because you would never see it coming. But this one, you see coming from a mile away. I don't want any part of that. You know,
I would
like
also
this.
suggest it's, if he is in it, it's definitely happening, because the belief is, well, Robert Downey Jr. is playing Victor Von Doom. It's also believed that Victor Von Doom is a variant of Tony Stark. How they tell that origin story remains to be seen, but it's almost a guarantee on both of those. Less of a guarantee on the Spider-Man front, but the
I can
fact
deal
that
with that in Secret Wars. Like, if that's how it plays, and I've seen that, you know, sort of moment play out where people are suggesting that, you know, Victor's going to be throttling Spider-Man, and they're going to have that moment, and, you know, Spider-Man's going to be on the ropes, and a portal's going to open, and, you know, Tony walks through and it's Iron Man. Like, okay, fine. If that happens, it happens, because in a world of multiversal variants, I can live with that. You know, there is a universe where Tony Stark becomes Doctor Doom. So, like, I can live with a world where he is raised as Victor Von Doom, but he's Iron Man and he's Tony Stark. Like, I can live with that sort of variant, you know, subterfuge and variance, because that's inherent of variance and multiversal storytelling. So I can live with that. I wouldn't have an issue with that. But, like, I just, you know, I don't want that in Doomsday, solely because you have so much story you need to tell in Doomsday that I do not want to stop for that, because it's too obvious, you know?
yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, yeah, I think it's so hard where this could go, right? And like, we could get into a whole conversation about how the Tony Stark who died at the end of Endgame, I still think there's a good chance he shows up in this, you know, via portals and time travel and all that shit that is already a thing there. But they can't blow their load on one movie. There needs to be a reason to come back for the second movie. And it's not like the two movies are being kept completely secret. The Russo brothers have already come out and said that Doomsday will absolutely end with a cliffhanger like ending, and it will make you want to come back and see the next one. They're not two separately told stories. Doomsday is setting the table for Secret Wars. So I would hate it if they blew their load all on one shot. I still don't know how it's going to work. There's so many fucking people involved in this, man. In my opinion, too many. So that's just me, though. I'll take the Captain Buzzkill award there. Randy, your thoughts? Do they need Spidey? Should Spidey be in this? Considering we have Daredevil, Punisher, and Hulk all popping up in Spidey's next movie?
Is Spider-Man needed? No. Will he be in it? More than likely. Obviously, between you and Johnny talking about just that one reveal, I'm taking it a step further where you can actually have something where he finds out early enough in the film that he kind of has that. There's no way that he's evil, so on and so forth. But when they actually have a fight with Doom, he has an opportunity to take Doom down. And because he sees Tony's face, he freezes and someone dies because of it. And then you have that character development of the guilt that he has to feel going through that. And then
Because Spider-Man needs more guilt after his last movie?
What I'm saying, let me finish. Let me finish. Silence. But have him have his redemption.
Randy hates
Secret
Spider-Man,
Wars.
confirmed.
I'm saying have him have his redemption in Secret Wars where he doesn't hesitate and he does what's needed to be done. Now, whether it ends up in something happening to him because he takes that, something emotional happens because he doesn't hesitate. There's, since he's one of the more successful characters, obviously they want to keep going with the franchise with him. But if they're like, okay, we're done with Spider-Man, what better send off to have than have him make that heroic sacrifice in Secret Wars because he screwed up in Doomsday. I mean, there's always that potential, especially since the multiverse is wide open.
Well, time will tell what happens here. I just think if you're having the next Spider-Man movie be loaded with other characters, you might as well have him in, one if not both of these movies. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets what Deadpool sounds like he's getting for Doomsday, someone who just pops in at the end. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Here's my Gears review for everybody out there. Between what I've played online as an Xbox player and what I've played story mode wise, I didn't have to pay for it because it's free on Game Pass, and I also had the previous Ultimate Edition, so I got a code for it as well. But a buddy of ours paid for it, and Johnny and him and I and my brother played the other night, and we weren't very successful, I'll say that. Had someone had their mic on, we might have done a little bit better, but it's fun. It plays smooth, which is important. I didn't see 10,000 bugs. I think the ability to play smooth is vital nowadays. Not getting on there with a bunch of bugs. I know the people on Steam have had a ton of bugs. And as for the story mode, like the updated graphics are nice, and there are some subtle changes with some of the locations. But so far, it's kind of what you were saying about the Halloween game. Like, it's not a full price game. And if I had to pay for it to get it, I would. I think it's worth it. If you're telling me it was a full price game, maybe not. But it's been fun so far, and not going to give it a score or anything. I'm just going to say it's fun and probably worth the price of picking up if you're a Gears fan. Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. It's fun. It carries the nostalgia. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't feel so. It doesn't feel like you're playing a 20-year-old game, which was a fear. It carries over well. It carries over nicely. Graphically, it looks amazing. Getting to see all these maps again in new lighting and, with the modern day graphics is great. The game plays well, which is important. Nothing feels so drastically different gameplay wise. They've made some changes, even in the multiplayer. We noticed that certain weapons weren't where they used to be, and certain weapons altogether weren't there anymore. Hammer of Dawn. But those are changes with the time, and multiplayer changes games go through when you realize a weapon like the Hammer of Dawn probably never should have existed in multiplayer in the first place.
I was using that in single player the other day. Was playing through co-op with my kiddo, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know how we were playing maps with this weapon just actively available for everybody.
I mean, like in custom, sure. Custom, you can put in any map in the game. Put in any weapon in the game, and I'm okay with that because it's custom. You're playing with your friends, right? But like, online multiplayer with randoms should never have been a thing. But it's fun. I don't know. Maybe it's just our luck. The map rotation doesn't seem to feel very random.
No, that's something that needs to be improved for sure.
It's definitely felt sort of weighted towards a handful of maps in all of the games we play. Now, again, that could just be our random luck. Like that's the thing with RNG. Sometimes you're going to get a run where you're only going to get a handful of maps over and over again, and we've experienced that even in Gears 1. But it's fun if you enjoy Gears, if you love playing it. If you didn't get to experience and you want to experience it, then get it, play it, enjoy it. It's fun. Like you said, it is in Game Pass, so there is a viable option for you, even if you just want to try it. So if you like it, have fun, enjoy it. It's worth it. You're not going to be let down if you've played the original.
Agreed. I think that's solid. In other words, Randy, we await your arrival. I know you can't review it because you haven't played it yet, but
I promise.
We're anxious to play with you. Probably a poor choice of words, at least for me.
Just a wee bit.
Johnny. But let's keep the train rolling here, ladies and gentlemen. 2 more topics to get to this evening. I can get this one to get off the fucking screen. All right, so Star Wars and its upcoming release slate. Some of this is confirmed, and some of it's assumed. But considering what's been in the news the last, I'd say, 10 days, Starfighter has been heavily in the news. The Mandalorian and Grogu's been in the news. Ahsoka Season 2 has been in the news. We talked about hearing that the KOTOR remake and Eclipse were both hoping for a 2027 release to strengthen that 50th anniversary year. It was months ago that it was confirmed Dawn of the Jedi would be up after Starfighter, and then we found out that it's one of the Andor writers writing the movie, and James Mangold would be directing it. And then there's some stuff we haven't heard about in a while, and then also in the news this week was Simon Kinberg's Star Wars Episode 10. No word on when it would be set, but there's a good... We'll get into what might happen there. Actually, we'll skip ahead a bit. So, the heavy rumor with Star Wars Starfighter is Ryan Gosling's character, who plays the uncle of the young boy in it, and Ryan Gosling's character is also the brother to Amy Adams' character. She's the mother of the boy. And they're trying to get this character to safety. Now, most seem to believe the boy is Force sensitive. This is coming from some fairly reputable places. And most believe the MacGuffin at the end of the movie, i.e. Luke Skywalker, The Force Awakens, although I don't think you're going to... Well, Luke was only in the end of The Force Awakens. He's talked about all through the fucking movie. Like, he's central to that. I don't think you're going to have people talking about the character I'm bringing up all through the movie. I think it's just going to be her at the end. And I do believe the character that they're trying to get to safety will ultimately go to Rey's new Jedi Order. That's where I think they're trying to get the character. How big that Jedi Order is, who knows? I'm firmly convinced that Rey New Jedi Order movie will never happen, considering it seems like Star Wars episodes 10, 11, and 12 through Simon Kinberg have picked up way more steam than that movie has. Keeping in mind, that movie was supposed to come out before The Mandalorian and Grogu, Starfighter, and Dawn of the Jedi, and will not before any of those. And knowing that we've now heard more about the official episode 10 than that movie, I think that movie's dead, fellas. And who was it this week? Jeff Snyder on the Hot Mic put out there that it's his belief, again, he's reading in between the lines, no one's told him it's concrete, that while Starfighter is a standalone movie, that you don't need to have seen any Star Wars movie before to watch. It will also serve as the bridge between the sequel trilogy and Episode 10. And if that's the case, that tells me that it's Rey at the end of the movie, which is something that Snyder did say would happen many, many, many months ago before we were probably ever confident enough to believe this movie would ever be filmed. Definitely pre Ryan Gosling, too. So keep that in mind while discussing that slate. We'll come back to that. When you look at the slate, fellas, what's your first thought? Randy, I'm going to go to you first here. I think the one big question now is the Dave Filoni movie, which at one point had a bunch of steam. Excuse me. At one point had a bunch of steam, but his role in Lucasfilm or at Lucasfilm has increased significantly since that movie was first announced, and might be about to increase again, possibly becoming the head of Lucasfilm with someone else or the joint head. I just not sure we're ever going to see that movie, at least not from him. And I do wonder if they close it off with a series.
Well, I think it really is going to depend on, like, how well Mandalorian Grogu does, how Ahsoka season 2 is, received, because we know we're building to something, especially with the way Ahsoka went in season 1. And obviously season 2 is going to build upon that. We know that Mandalorian and Grogu are going to be a part of it. The thing here is if it's a series, they need to do more than what they've done previous series. We need to have House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones length episodes if we're going to be able to tell the full story that they've been hinting at. Obviously, a movie's not going to probably do it as much justice either, but I think for Filoni's movie or series, I think he'll find time to write it. But beyond that, he's definitely not going to be able to direct it. He may be able to pop in here and there for, as a producer, and it'll be his story. But I just can't see him being able to direct it and give it the full attention he probably wants to. Whoever gets the opportunity to do this will be someone he completely trusts, and is definitely going to be someone who understands Star Wars in a similar way that he does.
I think the other thing here is if he is, he is believed to become a joint head whenever we get that announcement. We can't be far off at this point. He's going to have to heavily be involved in that Simon Kinberg Star Wars episodes 10, 11, and 12. And thank God they've hired one writer to write 3 fucking movies. And unless he's not going to be on the same page with himself, we shouldn't run into that problem. And I like Simon Kinberg. I like his work on the X-Men movies. I love his work on the first 2 seasons of Star Wars Rebels, which in my opinion, even though I love Thrawn, are the better seasons of Star Wars Rebels. I think he's an excellent guy to have heading that up. But you have Starfighter coming out, and if that movie ends up being wildly successful, they're certainly, setting themselves up to be wildly successful. You still have to go make the movie and produce the movie, and the audience is going to have their say as well as the critics. But if it is wildly successful, similar to, say, an Andor, then you're going to want episode 10, 11, and 12 to have a similar tone to that. You're not going to want to go back to the sequel trilogy tone, which Simon Kinberg says he's not doing. I think we talked about it last week or the week before, maybe in our chats. I think it was in our chats, actually, that maybe the Bannerman Banter chat, where we said, or Simon Kinberg had said, the inspiration for episodes 10, 11, and 12 is Andor and The Empire Strikes Back. Certainly setting yourself a high bar there, Simon. But I don't know, Johnny, when you look at this, man, I can honestly say when we look at the slate, regardless if some things hit on one year or another year, it's the most impressive Star Wars slate that we've covered since the early Wastelands days. And again, they got a hit on it. Seems like, we were shocked to learn Starflight is actually filming. We thought that was a fall thing. But first of all, I guess for you, does this seem like an impressive slate? And honestly, if Starfighter's super successful, do you think they're really going to want to wait till 2030 for episode 10? If Filoni's movie becomes a series, you open up a movie slot in 2029. Because I think we can all confidently say, I don't think Disney's going to release 2 Star Wars movies in 1 year again.
So I guess we just need to wait and kind of see where things fall for, Mandalorian Grogu to some degree. But also, if Starfighter is wildly successful, which, I mean, let's be honest, we need a win, right? As Star Wars fans, we need a big win. And if it's as good as we all hope it is, given the talent, given how quickly they're putting it into production and how much buzz there is about it, as a fan, I'm all for it. And if we need to move up episode 10 and they have a solid script and they've got the pieces in place to do it, go for it. I'm sure that with everything that's going on in Filoni's life, he wouldn't mind, going down to a series potentially, or like I said, having someone else do the movie so he can focus on episode 10 with Kinberg. So it's really going to boil down to, just, like you said, how successful Starfighter is. And if I'm all for it if they want to, and if it makes sense, and we're in I would say a new golden age for Star Wars by then. Only one can hope. It would be pretty exciting to get that bumped up, because let's be honest, if Kinberg's going to take inspiration from Andor and Empire Strikes Back, that means we're getting some more adult Star Wars. And honestly, that's been, growing up with it and growing with Star Wars, I'm ready for more adult Star Wars. I get the kiddies have to have their part too, but let's go. Like I said, more Andor, more Andor type stories, more serious natured stories, stuff that is for us as we've grown with Star Wars.
Johnny, I'm asking you to put your tinfoil hat on here, man. We talk about the what ifs with the success and stuff, but if Starfighter is super successful and it is the bridge between the sequel trilogy and Simon Kinberg's episode 10, do you see them wanting to hold off 3 whole years to do this, or is there a chance to move up into the Filoni spot? Like, this is the dangerous part about trying to work in so many areas at once. Keep in mind, they got a damn fucking and what is it called again? Dawn of the Jedi movie that takes place fucking 25,000 years before any of this shit. How do you see this playing out, man?
In general, horribly. Because it's, like you said, it's the most jam-packed calendar that we've had since the heat of the sequel trilogy, right? Like
2015 when we were doing shows.
Like when we were going through 7 and the Rogue One and Solo and 8 and the Mandalorian, and all of those things sort of kind of clustered in and around themselves, that it just too much is not always a good thing. It's how you end up with fatigue. And I think that's a genuine risk here. I mean, especially with Simon Kinberg's being a trilogy. You're definitely running the risk of running right back into the fatigue we've just gotten out of. Like, that's the thing, that we're not looking at the flip side of this. Like, we're looking at, okay, fans are happy again. Let's ramp it up. Let's sprint. Let's go as fast as we can, get as much as we can. And that's the wrong attitude. When what we want is quality. We want work that is good, that is well thought out. That's the most important thing. And if you start rushing because one thing is successful, if you start rushing other things to meet earlier windows because something else, like say the Filoni movie gets switched to a series, you're suddenly like, oh, well, now we have a release window for a movie. Don't rush. Take the time. You've given Simon this window. Let him hit it. Like, if you decide to pull the plug on this and he is grossly ahead of schedule to the point where it's, not going to take anything away from him, then okay, you could push it out. But
to help people with the timeline here before you continue, he's been on the project about a year. So a lot of people say with blockbuster films, it's 5 years from the time you start, your initial writing, when appropriately developed anyways, to your theatrical release.
The only person in recent memory that I can think of that's turned a project like this around and thrown on the afterburners and still delivered is Christopher Nolan in Oppenheimer, which I finally sat down and watched yesterday. And that's the only time in recent memory where they've thrown the jets on and it's worked. But he's Chris Nolan.
Yeah, as I say, I love me some Simon Kinberg, who I do not believe will direct any of these. That's the other thing. Who do you bring on as the director, right? You need to be aligned with a vision here. I get what you're saying in terms of too much, but I would also say this. We have just gone from 2019 through, and it will be 2026 when we see the next Star Wars theatrical release. That's too long with nothing. Like, if we're just focusing on the movies here, that's too long with nothing. One movie a year was always going to be fine. Where they ran into problems is they started firing everyone left and right if they didn't fucking obey to the chief and commander, who I shall not name, and compare them to Voldemort. And that person is fucking on their way out finally. That being said,
you get Mickey Mouse out of this.
That being said, let's not forget, Tony Gilroy spoke volumes about her ability to push Andor through, and Andor for me, anyways, is probably the third best Star Wars project ever made, maybe even the second. But Tony Gilroy also had time, right? And then we also can't forget that Tony Gilroy has changed his tune from never want to work on this again because I'm exhausted to, let me do a couple of my own things and we'll revisit that. So you have that caveat as well. The thing that gets me is it's not all aligned, right? Like, I don't know how you could take James Mangold's 2,000 or 25,000 years before A New Hope story, the birth of the Jedi and likely the Sith, and have that be relevant in anything else other than, like, it could be a pure standalone thing, but at least with, like, Starfighters being advertised as a standalone. However, the belief is it's going to be a bridge between two trilogies. Now, I suppose you could introduce some fucking ancient badass Sith in the, Jedi, whatever, what the fuck's it called? Dawn of the Jedi film, the Mangold and Andor writer film, and have that character somehow be relevant in Star Wars episodes 10, 11, 12. I.e. something like the Avengers would do. That's the one where I'm not saying everything needs to connect super closely, but I think you need some ties for this, or you're going to run into the issues that you did before. Like, The Force Awakens is the greatest domestic box office success ever in the history of cinema, and like number 2 or 3 worldwide. You followed that up with Rogue One. Well, at the time, got mixed reception. It did well financially. Most people love it now. I think Andor has really helped improve that movie. The Last Jedi, which is something I intend to do a watch party for on this channel. I'm still very confused how I feel about that film. I definitely don't hate it anywhere close to what I did when it first came out, but I've also had two fantastic Rian Johnson films come out in the Knives Out series since then that make me understand him more as a writer. Does that mean you should have done episodes 7 and 8 and not had anyone on the same page? No, it doesn't. And The Rise of Skywalker was trash, and Solo just did horribly at the box office and was out 6 months after The Last Jedi. And we were talking in one of our chats, I think it might have been Bannerman Banter, where it's like, Solo's not a bad film. I remember Johnny and I being pretty happy with that film,
It was enjoyable.
how that film turned out. But let's remember what the plan was. That Solo movie was supposed to spawn a Lando movie, another Han Solo story, and an Obi-Wan movie. Actually, 3 of them, all off the legs of that. And guess what? The only thing that ever happened was an Obi-Wan series that ended up having nothing to do with that movie. So, I think you got to get a plan and stick to it. Now, I'm not saying I've heard anywhere that Dawn of the Jedi is going to tie into anything. I'm saying, from a business sense and a storytelling sense, you should find a hook to have it tie into something, or else it's going to be off on this island by itself. And I don't know if we need standalone stuff in Star Wars that aren't TV series.
I think, and this is just me, and this is sort of something that's sort of come to me in the process of this conversation tonight while we've been having this, is that, you were suggesting we need a hook from Dawn of the Jedi to tie into everything else that's going on. And I sort of had that moment of clarity in thought of, that's actually pretty easy. And I hadn't thought of the idea of something like this, but we sort of have, we've said this many times, that we're Legends fans. We grew up on the books. That was, part of it. So we know these stories, but Exar Kun.
You'd be moving his place in the story for sure.
Well, I don't even necessarily mean Exar Kun specifically. I just mean somebody who sort of fills that void in the canon. Like, he could be the villain in Dawn of the Jedi and then, have his death, not necessarily be ambiguous, but like, sort of the same way Exar Kun comes back into Luke's New Jedi Order as a villain, and they set up the, if memory. And this is just sort of, I did a quick Google just to make sure I had the right character that I was thinking of. But like, didn't he set up Luke's? The school was like on his burial ground or near his burial ground, and
it was on Yavin.
Was reaching through and trying to possess the students, and something like that. I think would be a good way to do it, and it ties sort of in with all of the, could tie in with the history and the Dawn of the Jedi story, and having your big villain there, and then you get this story here that ties into your, instead of Luke's New Jedi Order, into Rey's New Jedi Order. It just, I think that's sort of an avenue to take, but again, it requires thought and planning, and we don't know how on the same page Simon Kinberg is versus James Mangold and the production team for Dawn of the Jedi. Now, hopefully, Dave Filoni and his new, stories czar position that he has been in for the last few years is smart enough to sit down and sort of put those pieces of the puzzle together and, realize you can tell a story that spans 25,000 years through the Force, which you're also sort of through Ahsoka establishing more of the rules of the world between worlds, and hopefully, presumably, through the Mortis gods. Like, it's a very interesting time where all of these pieces on the chessboard are sort of aligning in such a way that you can tell a story like that. You couldn't have done that in 7, 8, 9 or in that era. It never would have worked. But now a lot of those pieces are aligning in such a way that you could tell that story with, through that, because it's sort of, the same thing. Rey, as far as like story positions go, Rey is in more of a position of Luke was in New Jedi Order versus the position Luke was in Episode 7.
Well, the interesting hook there is, speculation, but I don't think the Rey New Jedi Order movie is ever happening. But what if Simon Kinberg's trilogy is replacing the new
Yeah.
Jedi Order Rey movie, and the new Jedi Order so happens to be
At
in
this
that
point,
movie.
when I say Rey's New Jedi Order movie, I am in fact referring to 10, 11, 12 trilogy.
And we know how much they like repurposing Legends content too. Like, and you don't need everybody to be on like a super close page. You basically need to just
You just need the
say to,
character, and
and you can still kill him
oh,
in
absolutely,
Dawn of the Jedi.
you
You
have to.
just
I think
basically
you have to.
need what's the guy's name? Bo something. The Andor writer there. I think him and Mangold just need to understand that, hey, this guy's gonna pop up again 25,000 and
He needs to
50
be
or so
good,
years later.
and you need an
So
actor on board to, be a part of.
for sure. Randy, your thoughts on Johnny's idea? I actually love it. I think that'd be a fantastic way to tie it all together.
I mean, it works. There is so many things in Legends they could pull from, and the idea of using XR Kun in that way would be absolutely just a ton of fun. I'd be all for it. And again, because it's Legends, you don't have to have it Luke's school. You could always easily have it Rey's school. So yeah, I can see how they could usually repurpose that. Hell, you can even bring some of the fan favorites from Legends into canon that way as well. So I mean, granted, we all want to see I mean, whether it's Corran Horn or Kyle Katarn, we all want to see them at some point, and this is a potentially good opportunity to do that. But we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, I like it. I like the idea of it, and like you said, it's a good way to tie everything together.
We'll go around the round table here and answer this one, and then we'll move on to our final topic. Does the Dave Filoni movie happen if he's in fact like predicted to be named the co-head of Lucasfilm? Johnny?
I think yes, because again, this is sort of our presumptions and my thought process that he would be the more creative side guy, and whoever the co-head is would be more the the finances and the studio and that sort of picture. So I think he would have a bit more freedom to do the project. But I don't, I wouldn't be surprised if the opposite were also true. So I think it's kind of a 50-50, sort of see how the first few years of the partnership shakes out, how the first few projects are, and you know what I mean? Like, just sort of see how things shift and settle, and then make the decision on whether or not the ship is steady enough that Filoni can take the time to focus on a film or series, whatever it ends up being, and not focus on his duties as co-president.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say if he's the co-head, it isn't happening. It's harder to prepare for a cinematic release with them really trying to focus on quality control, although I have plenty of questions about Andor when it comes, or sorry, not Andor, Mandalorian and Grogu when it comes to that. And plus, even though they're dialing it back on Disney Plus is still a thing. You're still going to want basically a series on Disney Plus each and every year, and I think there's a good chance Obi-Wan season 2 is going to happen at this point with how it's been gaining steam and certain things Ewan McGregor's been saying. And we know there's an untitled Star Wars TV show in the works. I just can't remember who the creators of that one are. I just like, unless the Mandalorian and Grogu are going to be super heavily involved in the Filoni movie, and I always thought they'd be a part of it as more of an ensemble. You're going from Ahsoka season 2 into a movie. I think you kind of take the Marvel Defenders route from Netflix and only make it 100 times better than that piece of shit show that I thought was terrible. So, I love a lot of the Marvel shows, specifically Daredevil and Punisher, but my God, I thought that show was bad. I just don't see it happening. Randy?
Yeah, if he is a co-head, that's hard. That's a lot of work. Uh, could he still produce? Yes. May he still have some writing ideas here and there that he can pass along, or at least put out there for someone else to direct? Yes. But him getting the opportunity to sit down and actually direct a movie, no, it's not going to happen. He's better off trying to get a series off the ground, to finish telling his story, and just write the story. Let someone else and pick his directors and his producers who understand Star Wars like he does and has the same passion level, so that they can put the best product out there possible.
All right, let's get to our final topic, which we probably only have about 10 or 12 minutes to spend on. Um, Fightful Select confirms today. Well, I mean, if you see it Raw, I think it's pretty obvious where it's going. But Fightful Select confirms today that AJ Lee is expected to make her debut. I shouldn't say debut. Is expected to team with CM Punk versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. It's weird. Again, big Punk fan. Was never a big AJ fan. Um, we'll start here, Johnny. Were you an AJ fan? And what's this I hear about? Again, I've heard it from Fightful, heard it from Post Wrestling, that she apparently had this big impact on the up and coming generation of wrestlers that were in NXT at the time when she was in her last year or two or something like that. I maybe I've slept through it and just haven't missed it, but apparently it's a big thing. Maybe you can educate me a little bit in that. And what are your thoughts on just an AJ Lee return in general?
I can't inherently speak to the backstage because, it's all so much, hearsay and speculation and rumors and myth. And, you don't really, you never really know, the specifics of the story. I can't say this. AJ Lee was the pointy end of the stick for the Give Divas a Chance movement. She was one of the ones that was really sort of that brought that to the forefront, in that end of the Divas era where they were getting, 2 minutes a match, and nobody, and the staff didn't care. That was her era. She was the one that was, as crazy as it is, going out there with Nikki Bella and, showing the world that they can actually wrestle. And that was her for a large portion. Her and Paige, having their team and then feud and all of that. It definitely had an impact on what would come. That was right around the era where the Four Horsewomen started getting called up, and that was the era where they went from being divas to being back to the women's division. And yeah, I think she had a large part of that because she's always been a very outspoken person. That's something that has always been true. You always heard about her being the one who wanted to not just be, the eye candy. That's something I kind of, I can't remember specifics, but, like in interviews and cons and things like that, she would always be the one sort of championing we can be more than this. And I'm sure that was in the locker room as well. So yeah, I think she sort of had an impact in that regard. I certainly don't think she was the most talented in that era. She was just sort of, and I know this sort of sounds condescending and mean and rude, and it really isn't, but she was the best in a bad era. Like I don't really remember um, her career sort of before WWE. Like I don't remember her having a big indie run. I don't think she had one. I'm pretty sure she just, kind of was very quick in training straight to WWE and was sort of a product of the system. And, so you didn't, we never got the chance to see how talented she actually is in the ring. And, I know she certainly has the pedigree, the chops of her trainers. I know she was trained by Jay Lethal and, all of that. So it's like, I know she has the pedigree, but she never got an opportunity to show it off. And I don't know. I think the big thing for me is I feel like this is too late. Um, she left the company in 2015. She left the year after Punk did. And it just, it's too late for me. And I'm, I've been excited for the idea of AJ Lee for a long time, coming back. And I thought there were many opportunities where that would have been a good thing. I don't know that this is it. I'm not interested in this. I'm not, this feud does not interest me at all. This entire program doesn't interest me at all. And I don't, I think it's probably a good part of that is I think this is the worst Becky Lynch run ever. Like, this is not a fun run. I'm not enjoying this Becky Lynch run at all. She's like the female Goldberg right now, and I hate it. Like, she's steamrolling everyone, and I'm not enjoying it. It's not fun for me.
Well, I mean, to counter your point here, I'll say this. Again, as not an AJ Lee person, I think the crowd reaction to the possibility of this, whether it be
Sure,
online
no
or
doubt, it's gonna
in
get a
person,
pop. It's gonna be huge.
I mean, well, obviously it's going to get a pop on Friday, but I could get a pop if I was CM Punk's fucking bag boy on Friday. But I've never liked Becky Lynch either. Didn't like the man persona. Didn't like her at all. Couldn't stand her. And I thought, honestly, the whole vision thing has not been hitting for me. And that Becky Punk promo was by far the hottest thing WWE has done in months. And I can relate to it because I've been in the situation where, you get two guys and then they're girls and they all get into it and all hell breaks loose. And I think there is an interesting story here. I'm super invested in this program as long as it's short. And I think it will be. I think there's some people that are having unrealistic expectations on what this is. I'm not saying this is going to be her only match back. Like, sure, if she does this one, she might be able to do other big opportunities once in a blue moon. But like, I don't think this is I could be wrong. I don't think this is a full-time return happening here.
Oh God,
I think
no! I think
she's
this is a one and done
cog. Yeah, a cog in the wheel. And if they have something for her at WrestleMania one year or something, or at SummerSlam, she's more likely to do it having done this. But like, I see people getting excited, man, for one. I can't wait to see her in those tights again and those shorts. And I'm just like, I think you're one, appearance wise, there's porn if that's all you're interested in. Maybe go watch that. And two, she's much older now and has far more I don't want to use the word creative control, but power coming into this situation than she did way back when. I just think there's some people that are expecting one thing and are going to get another.
I think the look is going to be the same. I do expect that, and not because of, oh man, the look. I think for me that is sort of her. Like, if you look at the video that's sort of been recirculating this last week, that was her and Punk training for heels in the ring, wearing jean shorts. Like, it's
What? No, she's not. I've seen that video. Maybe you've seen a different one, but she's wearing full-on pants in that video.
I'd say, I mean, it
fucking...
could have been from the movie. Like, it could have been from the show.
Oh, I still haven't seen the show. I want to give it a shot, but haven't gotten around to it.
It could have been something that was more like her outfit in the show that she was like. It was more of a dress rehearsal type thing. It could have been, and it could have just been, just the way it looked in the shot. That I don't discount that it might have been, closer to gym shorts than jean shorts. But like, I don't think the look is going to be all that different. Like, I mean, the shorts aren't going to be as short. That much I'm sure of. But I don't expect the overall look to be all that different, just because it is, it's her look. It's the it's the look of the character.
I'll go one step further. I don't think it's going to be the same fucking theme song either. She
Oh,
spoke volumes about how much she hated that song at various conventions, but much like a lot of wrestlers. What was Randy Orton's theme before Voices? It was like, and it go like, "Hey, something you can." Anyway, he spoke about how much he hated that theme. I think we're in a day and age when people come in, depending on their status, they get what they want, and it still might have the
I
light it
think
up or
if it was
slide it
a
up or whatever it was.
full-time run, that would be true. I wouldn't, discount that. But for a short run, I don't see them going through all of that to get a new theme song to do all this for, one or two uses.
It depends who she knows, right? Like, look at the Adam Copeland deal with is it Alter Bridge?
Yes.
Is that who does it? They basically give AEW a sweetheart deal in terms of that. So I don't know how it's all going to play out. Randy, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I know you're more of an AEW guy than a WWE guy. I think a lot of WWE TV lately has been fast forwardable, which is what we've done quite a bit. But I thought the Punk and Becky segment was super fucking good. I thought the end of that match was super good. And I think they're set up to do something special here, but I still don't see any long-term future from this. How are you feeling about it all?
So yeah, like Becky definitely did her job, because even I was kind of getting like frustrated with the way, and Punk played it off perfectly, like the expression, everything, like that whole segment was gold. And if it doesn't end with what we all know should be coming and better be coming, then it's a complete disappointment. And we all know that's not going to happen, considering Punk's like, oh, we're SmackDown, Chicago? Okay. And so we all know that that's probably what's going to happen, is that's where, if they're smart, that's where she'll return, because anybody who watched the pay-per-view is going to be like, well, I know I need to turn into SmackDown now for a good reason. So, but ultimately, this feud, might be able to get a couple matches, at least get a singles match out of her with Becky, but on top of like the mixed tag match. Obviously, if they were smart, they're going to do the mixed tag match at WrestlePalooza, because clearly they're going to do everything they can to counter program AEW in that respect, and that would be a huge draw for them by itself. I don't hate what they've done here to set this up. It's just at some point, we do need to get away from Seth and Punk. There are other wrestlers that deserve a shot, and it feels like that everything they're doing is, every time we turn around, it's legit Punk and Seth all the time. And it's getting a little old for me. I know fans are loving it because they really are great on the mic with each other. They do go back and forth at each other really well. But I think with this, what they're doing now, bringing AJ Lee back for 1, 2, or 3 matches, you never know, I think is fine. Obviously, they're going to gauge how well she's received, how she feels, and who knows, it could turn into something a little more long-term or even part-time. But at this point, I'm looking at maybe 2 or 3 matches tops, and then her run's done.
Yeah, and that's okay too, by the way. Like, given how I'm sure there's got to be a conversation between Paul Levesque and her. You think Punk was pissed about that stuff on his wedding day? I'm assuming the bride was none too pleased. But I like the point you bring up, and we'll send it back to Johnny on this one too, because he was pretty on the money with the Seth Heyman stuff many months before it actually happened at Mania. Well, if you listen to Fightful at all, if you subscribe to Fightful Select, the long-term pitch, as well as Russell Pearson, Ebu or whatever, the long-term pitch as of, what are we now, September, I guess would have been a couple months ago, was they were leaning towards Seth versus Roman for, I shouldn't say it's for the heavyweight title because they didn't say that, and Punk versus Cody. as your 2 WrestleMania main events. If it is that still, and we know how much it changes, it just takes one person getting hurt. I think Seth has got to win the feud with Punk. I love Punk, but if Punk's destination is Cody at Mania, I don't think you can have him beat Seth in the end. Not saying they can't win the mixed match, but like I heard what you said there about 2 or 3 matches. I think Johnny said the same thing, but like I could see you do the mixed match and then maybe you get Becky versus AJ in is it San Diego where Survivor Series is?
Yeah.
I know it's a baseball field.
Yeah, it's in Petco.
Maybe you get that and you get the final Punk and Seth payoff match there too. Although I suspect Seth's group is going to be involved in the War Games match, so we'll see how that plays out. But again, I love Punk, but yeah, I am ready for that to end too. There are other people to feud with. I know there's talks of a draft happening soon, and not the way they've done it the last several years. I don't know if that means Seth's group would move over to SmackDown or Punk would. Doesn't sound like Netflix wants to lose Punk though, so I don't see that happening. Does this thing not have to end with, if that's the Mania plan? Doesn't Seth kind of have to win this?
The overall feud, maybe, but not inherently this match.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. Like clearly there will be another singles title match coming here.
Yeah.
I'm saying I don't think Punk can beat Seth for the title if the plan is Punk versus Cody.
No, absolutely not. It makes no sense, because then you'd have to change the title off Punk very quickly to move towards WrestleMania season, which is stupid. Because
what were you calling them again? Weren't you calling them? Oh man, they have a name now. What was I calling them? You had a name.
The Vision. The
Vision. But you were calling them something else because they were like another stable. I'm drawing a blank here.
I called them a lot of things. I went through
Evolution?
A lot of names.
Was it like Evolution 2.0 or something like that?
That was one of them. I called them the Dangerous Shield for a while. It was a lot of names that I workshopped for that group before they finally settled on the Vision after like 3.5 months of not having a name.
I mean, I guess he could have Punk win the title and hold on to it for longer than 5 minutes. Maybe it's a month or two, and have Braun Breaker beat him, which might have Seth playing the Triple H role of what the fuck. But again, if the plan, big if, is Seth versus Roman, whether that's night 1 or night 2, who knows, and Punk versus Cody, and if they're title matches, as much as I want Punk to beat Seth, I think Seth has to win. I don't know. Is that the conclusion you're coming to here in terms of not the mixed match? Because I'm pretty positive Punk and AJ will go over, but the feud.
I think he has to. I think Seth has to go over in the feud. In general, the more and more you keep talking about these, and I've read them too, so like it's not something that's new to me. There's just one thought that keeps coming through my mind. SOS. Same old shit. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. The Triple H era this would be what, the 3rd WrestleMania? I guess 5th if you want to count night 1s and night 2s as different events. But it has been the same 5 guys main eventing WrestleMania night 1 and night 2 for the better part of 5 years. I'm over it. Not even the Hulk Hogan era was that bad, because at least he fought somebody different every year. I'm tired of it. They need new blood in the main event, and they need it badly, because, and I know I'm veering off topic here wildly, but if they don't get new blood in the main event ASAP, they are heading for a bad time. With the rate of ticket inflation, people are going to get tired of seeing the same people in the main event time after time after time after time. Like I
Not if
saw
they
the
start moving WrestleManias overseas. It seems like those people are taking whatever they're willing to give and going bananas over it.
well, I mean, it's different though, like because they don't get it. They don't get them, like they don't get the pay-per-views, they don't get the shows. They're lucky if they get one a year. Now they're doing more, which I'm okay with because I love the European crowd. I think it's the best. Like for rankings of crowds, I think the European crowd is the best crowd environment in the world. I think it's better than the Canadian environment, which is saying something because I think as
Yeah.
far as atmospheres go, Canada is amazing in that regard. But
Fuck, even the Saudi crowd, man. Like, I'm not one to go back for Saudi, but like, I seen that show this year. It was
Saudi
wild.
shows in the arena, I'm okay with. Saudi shows in the stadium, no thank you, pass. I'm sure you can figure out the difference in why those two are different.
Yeah.
But like
You ever see the show The Big Comfy Couch?
yep, it's a pretty apt description.
Yeah.
But like they're
you
great.
mentioned stars, though. I would argue, though, you need to have people ready for that moment. And I can think of two names that are getting there, but I don't think, is this 42 coming up? 43, 42? I've lost track. I honestly
42.
don't know.
Yeah.
I think Braun Breaker and Jacob Fatu are absolutely on the way to being those guys. I don't think this WrestleMania is it though.
No,
in terms of where the stories are going right now, it would be a rush job. And I think by the time you reach 43, you could have both of those guys in those positions. But in 42, I think we're all going to have to accept the fact that those rumored main events, I guess they could become triple threat matches too, but are probably likely at this point, especially the Punk and Cody one. They've teased that for 2 fucking years now.
Yeah,
which in fairness would not be the same old shit for those two anyway. Same old shits, but not the same old.
I don't know. I mean, like it's but like me, like as sort of the like for the storytelling perspective, give me Randy and Cody at WrestleMania because at least that match has the history, and it's probably Randy's last hurrah.
Bro, we just seen that shit. You're saying same old shit. Randy, save me, please. And I don't mean by giving me an RKO.
Well, I can't exactly do that from here anyway, so you're safe. No, it's definitely time to start building more talent. It's great to see that, given how experienced Jacob Fatu is, how well he's gotten over in WWE, and I do feel like he's definitely going to be part of the future. Braun definitely is. He's almost there. He really is, and I get that what's happening here with Seth and Bronson is supposed to help elevate him to that point. I mean, we've already seen the seeds being sown of him breaking off anyway, so it's going to be interesting to see how ultimately it plays out. But we definitely need some new blood injected into things because it is the same. If it does feel like the same 5-6 superstars, or even some of at least the women are trying something new. Granted, I'm a little disappointed that Io is going to be wrestling Stephanie at WrestlePalooza. I figured they at least put a heel up against Stephanie, but it's still going to be a great match either way. But I mean, that's the thing. The women are getting fresh blood in more than the men are. And we're seeing the women start to put on just same type of caliber matches that some of the men are putting on. This is one of the evolution of the sport to some degree, but the guys need to step up. We need guys who are ready to main event, who are ready to take that next step. And you're right. Jacob and Braun are the two most likely people to do that. But, I mean, I guess you could, Gunther's already been there. So you don't want to overuse him. We've seen a ton of matches, whether it's the old guard or even some of the newer people that's more recently starting to get into it, like Jay, and even LA Knight's they're pushing him a little hard now, but still, it's time to finally have that young group that's whether call up Obafemi, let him do his thing on the main roster. Just
That act isn't going to get over.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, considering what, some of the guys have called up and they've done nothing with, it's just, I don't know. It's very frustrating. I agree with that. We just need something new sometime soon, because it's only going to get to a point where if we're going to see Roman, Seth, Cody, Punk in a main event again, I can see why Johnny is like, same old shit. And it's unfortunate that we're to that point, but here we are. Someone's got to step up. Someone's got to take that brass ring. Who's it going to be other than Braun or Jacob? That's really the question at this point.
My argument against the same old shit thing is the same way you don't rush a rookie quarterback or a rookie goaltender. Is there's no one else ready right now for those spots, and you risk ruining them if you put them in a spot they're not ready for. And look, I like Randy Orton as much as the next guy, but he's not a main eventer there anymore. He's just not. He's been put in the I am a celebrity role. If you want to make an argument for Drew McIntyre, I'll listen to that one. But Randy Orton has become the glorified version of the fucking Miz in Triple H's booking the last year. Sorry, tell me I'm wrong.
I'm not saying you're. I'm just laughing at because I thought about it. I'm like, oh my god, you're right. But no,
I'm not saying he doesn't deserve more.
Drew too. I'll argue for Drew too. He deserves better than what he's gotten.
At least with Punk and Cody, post Cody's rise to fame, essentially, that's never happened. Didn't happen in AEW. They've teased it in back-to-back years in WWE. They've had killer promos against one another in WWE, and then it doesn't happen. So I see the writing being on the wall for that one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Since the Tribal Chief thing came into play, haven't Seth and Roman only had one 1v1 match? And wasn't it a either no contest or DQ or something like that? I could be wrong. I was not present for all of it.
I think their last singles match was 2021 Royal Rumble. Maybe 22. That would have
been towards the beginning of the Tribal Chief stuff, I would think.
Yeah, it was kind of like beginning, middle. It was before the second inning.
I could see where creative is going with both of those. Being like, okay, these are the two things that we're going to do for this year's main event. But I would also say you better start building the other people up, because almost all of those guys are one bad injury from maybe not being it, but not being the same. It's almost a miracle in some respects that Punk has been able to stay healthy as long as he has and work as much as he has and at a fairly high level. Roman has been around more this year than last. Maybe around more this year than the last two. But, for me, that's on Triple H. Like, okay, so you got Braun Breaker in the Batista role, and you have Jacob Fatu, and I'll be frank, I don't watch SmackDown a bunch, but seemingly doing not a whole lot of anything. And you have, how long is it till 43? A year and a half, roughly? Let's say it's around 18 months. You have 18 months to get both of those guys to that spot.
I think you meant Braun is in the Randy Orton spot.
No, I meant Braun is in the Batista spot.
Oh, then I think you got that wrong, because Batista was a fluke. Wasn't planned. Batista was the muscle. He was the I look good in a suit and I'm big and muscular guy in the group.
Right, but the end result, I'm talking, he ended up getting over with the
But from a
fans
pure
and-
pedigree standpoint, I think Randy is the better comparable to Braun because they have the future. Like he is like Randy was the next guy. Like he was the, you know, we're putting you in this group because you need the rub. Batista got over because I can't logically explain to you how Batista got over other than lightning in a bottle.
I'm glad he did because he's become the
It
best
worked.
fucking actor of the bunch who went to Hollywood. So, and that includes Dwayne Johnson, by the way.
Oh, boy. Don't even get me started on Dwayne right now.
And, speaking of which, I mean, we don't have 30 minutes here to go off on that, but quite the body transformation for
Yeah, you know, when you stop
for
taking
Dwayne.
steroids for a while, that's gonna happen.
Yeah,
What? I'm
like-
sorry. Pardon?
Yeah.
Next person who tells me he's sick, I'm punching him in the face. He's not
That's
sick.
the
He's
most-
probably healthier than he's been in 20 years.
He probably stopped clanging and banging and started doing cardio. That's what.
No, he stopped injecting and swallowing. He probably still clangs and bangs.
There's a bad joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to touch it.
That's the most fit, like in terms of slimness, I've seen him since he basically took on Goldberg. When was that? 03?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's the smallest I've seen him since then. So I know though people will be like, "Oh, well, in-ring return," and
No,
I'm sure
absolutely not.
he'll have another match at some point in time. But like, I don't know. But that's the show. 2 hours in. It was a fun one. Anyone have any final thoughts they want to make on anything that we talked about tonight? Randy, I'll send it over to you.
Nothing off the top of my head, but again, let's see what happens with AJ. See how she's, the reception she gets, and kind of just how she feels after her matches. Because could 2 or 3 matches turn into a 6-month run where she's around every couple of weeks, possibly, but it's really good. Would it help the women's division? I don't know, just because you look at what Nikki's doing right now with her comeback, and we saw that match from this past weekend. So let's just hope that AJ is in better shape in terms of the ring skill than Nikki Bella was over the weekend when we finally get her back.
Well, that's a pretty low bar. I was sitting beside my father-in-law when that match was on, and he was going on about how fucking terrible it looked and how horrible it was. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to lie. This is really bad. Johnny, final thoughts on anything tonight?
I mean, no, because I don't want to start another tangent.
Fair enough.
Alrighty then. Well, that is going to do it for us this evening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all. Bonus content, head on over to patreon.com/The Mask of Fear. Link is in the description below. Halloween game sounds great. Now they need to deliver on it. They have a plan. Sounds like they're already delivering behind the scenes, but only time will tell. Don't forget, tomorrow night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. If you're a patron member, head on over. Watch for a link. We will be watching episode 4 of Ahsoka, and 4 is one of my favorite episodes of the series. So, really looking forward to that. And for Johnny and Randy and everybody in the chat, we'll see you next time.